365 or 366 days a year. Welcome to the weekend. Happy weekend to all of you. Thank God it's Friday. And welcome to the best way to possibly start your weekend, our 1 hour Q&A, Ask Me Anything for the next hour or so until, let's see, what time is it now? Until about 6:10 Central Time. I will be bringing you friendly neighborly history, answering all of your questions regarding history, social studies, and the like. So welcome to the Friendly Neighborhood History channel. And you can already see Hars and Harry, my wonderful moderators, are here. Hars, please put the social media handles in the chat. This is a weekend of celebration, so I hope you guys are enjoying your summer and having a great weekend. But we are celebrating because we are officially at the second tier of monetization, which means we're getting ad revenues. We're going to get paid for the content we do on this channel, even the streams, and I'm really looking forward to it. We reached our goal just over halfway into the year. My goal was to do this by the end of the year, but we became monetized it only took us a little more over almost 7 months. And we really, really appreciate all of the support and all of your help with everything, your contributions, your questions, you coming to the live streams, you watching the videos. I have long form videos dropping every Monday and Friday. My one about the first seven, the ancient Roman kingdom and the first 7 rulers of Rome comes out today at 8 Eastern. So go check that out after this live stream is done. And after we do an hour here, we're going to go over to Instagram and do an hour there as well. So you can ask me another hour of questions and answers regarding history, social studies, and the like. And yes, we are officially in the money. We are a monetized channel here on YouTube. It only took us a little over a year. I know for some it's quicker, for some it takes a little longer, but we are really, really excited about that. So this is a weekend of celebration. We've got an hour of Q&A here. And tomorrow I will be going live at 2 Central Time. I'm going a little earlier. Instead of 5 o'clock, I'm going at 2 o'clock. And I'm going to go for 2 hours to give you guys, sorry, Harry, 2 hours to give you guys as much wonderful Q&A as you would like as we celebrate this weekend. And of course, I will have my long form videos, all of the usual short stuff that I have. And you can follow me on social media, such as here or on TikTok. Harry, can you put the Instagram in the chat? And Hars, can you please put the what is it? Let me see. The TikTok in the chat. We are Friendly Neighborhood History on TikTok and on Instagram and on Substack and Patreon and all of those great places. And yes, we will be raising money for this channel. A lot of the money will go back into the channel, getting better equipment, better lighting, all sorts of incredible stuff. We're really looking forward to it. Hello, Olivia. Welcome to the Friendly Neighborhood History channel. And if you like history, social studies, and the like, consider liking and subscribing and becoming a Friendly Neighborhood Historian. It's as easy as hitting that like and subscribe. You are officially a Friendly Neighborhood Historian. And if you have a question regarding history or social studies or a topic you would like me to talk about for the next hour or so, I'm happy to bring it to you from the Friendly Neighborhood History studio. I am back in my Hugh Hefner smoking jacket. I haven't been wearing it a lot because it's been a really hot summer, but it's a nice cool day. And as I rushed home from the DMV, aka Nazi Germany, I decided it was time to don the smoking jacket, to relax a little bit, and to talk about history with you guys for the next hour or so. So if you like the vibes here, if you like history and social studies, if you have questions about those topics, please drop them in the chat. Sit back, relax, and start your weekend off the right way by talking about history in a friendly, neighborly manner. So, and yes, I want to get my Discord starting. I need to get a better laptop, which the funds for the channel. So all the funds we're going to raise at this channel, if you become a member or from ad revenue, or if you give me a perk comment or something like that, will be going back into the channel so that I can get better equipment, better microphones, better surroundings, better sound equipment, all of that great stuff. I'm really looking forward to it. Well, I'm not going to visit. I would like to visit the graves of every single U.S. president, and their birthplaces and their libraries. I don't know where Woodrow Wilson's grave is. I'm not dying to go to see it, but that is kind of wild, Harry. So if you have a question about history, social studies, or the like, consider liking and subscribing and all of that great stuff. Yeah. Let me see. Does anybody have any questions regarding history or social studies? It's friendlyneighborhoodhistory@gmail.com. If you want to talk to me about a deeper topic or something that you want to discuss, it's friendlyneighborhoodhistory@gmail.com. Colombo? What Colombo, Running Man? What are you referring to? It's good to see you, by the way. So yeah, we're going to go for an hour now, and then we've got 2 hours tomorrow from 2 Central to 4 Central. And then Sunday, we'll have our live stream lecture, and I got to figure out the topics that we're going to discuss there. But check out my long form video that comes out today at 8 Eastern, where I will be talking about the first Roman kingdom and all of that great stuff. Oh, Columbo as in the detective show. Oh yeah, that's a great show. Well, inside DC. Oh, that's right. Woodrow Wilson is the only president to be buried in DC. I think it's because he never, I don't know why he's not buried in New Jersey. That's where he was from. Explain the Saratoga campaign, 1777, since the anniversary is coming up. Saratoga was the American battle where generals like Horatio Gates and Benedict Arnold were able to surprise a much larger British force under Canadian General John Burgoyne and his troops, who came down from Canada to attack the colonial patriots at Saratoga in upstate New York. It was a huge victory. It was a surprising victory. The Americans were basically able to surround the British and destroy a much larger force. It was a huge victory for the Americans, and it brought the French into the war, wanting to take a piece out of the British and basically get more of that going. So yeah, Saratoga, one of the most important battles in American history. And I'm very heavily dehydrated because I just waited for hours in a DMV line. So I rushed back here, changed into my smoking jacket, my typical history Hefner robe, and now I'm providing some friendly neighborhood history for you for the next hour or so. He went to school in New Jersey. He was the president of Princeton University, and he was the governor of New Jersey. He lived in New Jersey for a long time. I'm surprised he was not buried in New Jersey. Yes, he was originally from Virginia. He is only one of 2 U.S. presidents to be a citizen of the Confederacy, along with John Tyler, who was president in the 1840s. Did you know that Calvin Coolidge had a raccoon as a pet? Yes, I've heard about that. I forget the name of the raccoon, though. Some presidents have had wild animals. The idea of having a president having just a dog is kind of a new phenomenon. Presidents have had wild animals. James Buchanan was once gifted an elephant from an Indian Raja. So what would you say was the single most important battle of the Revolutionary War? Saratoga is definitely up there. I have to go with Trenton. Washington, surprised by crossing the Delaware and defeating the Hessian contingents, kept the American war going. And despite the importance of battles like Guilford Courthouse, of course, Yorktown, the New York campaign, Saratoga, the Battle of Bunker Hill, Lexington and Concord, I got to go with Trenton. It's an unlikely pick because it allowed the Americans to stay in the fight. If they had not won that battle and defeated the Hessians and the British there, they probably would have surrendered. Washington needed a victory like the day, like his life depended on it, because it literally did, and he got it. So, hello, Fury. Great to see you. And Lifelight, great question. Thank you for joining us. Lifelight is a longtime friendly neighborhood historian, and you can be too if you just like and subscribe. And if you have questions about history and social studies, I'm here to answer them, and we'll be here for the next hour or so. Tomorrow, 2-hour special. Sorry, Harry. Again, got to do it the right way, not the American way. 2-hour special of Friendly Neighborhood History, where I'll be answering your Q&As as we celebrate this weekend, because we just hit the 2nd tier of monetization here on YouTube, which means these videos, all of the stuff we do, we'll be making a little bit of money, and once YouTube steals it and the government steals the rest, I'll have like 5 cents left over, but I'm happy about it because it was one of my goals for the year, and we got it done. It was supposed to take a year, it took 6 months, and we're really excited about that. Avi, hello, good to see you. 5 cents, woo, yes. And in this economy, 5 cents can buy you absolutely nothing and loses all of its value because of the new tariffs. So, oh well. I hope you're doing well, Freshly, great to see you. Do you know what is really sad? There was only one president that was the definition of the American dream, and he got assassinated, James A. Garfield. Yeah, Garfield came up from nothing, but there's a lot of presidents who I'd say were the definition of the American dream. Andrew Jackson, certainly coming from a log cabin, having his family killed, his father dying before he was born. William Jefferson Blythe, better known as William Jefferson Clinton, basically his mother remarrying a guy who was an alcoholic and him rising to become the U.S. president. Barack Obama, his father from Kenya. There's plenty of presidents, and his mother not being able to raise him growing up with his grandparents, living in Indonesia for a time, coming back to the United States, going to Occidental College, then Harvard Law School, and then I think it was Harvard, and then becoming one of the most important people in Chicago's history, and then the first African-American president for a country that had enslaved Africans is an incredible accomplishment, to be sure. Many U.S. presidents are the summation of the American dream. I would say that all founding presidents, the first 5 presidents, Washington, Adams, Jefferson, James Madison, James Monroe, are the fulfillment of the American dream because they survived basically being on the point of being killed for being rebels against the British during the American Revolution to become the leaders of the entire country, a new country that was founding its way in the early 19th century. So it's pretty incredible. Yes, but he literally didn't have shoes till he was like 6 because his family couldn't afford it. Andrew Johnson's wife had to teach him to read. There's a lot of presidents that were extremely poor. Lincoln obviously is the American dream. And you look at a lot of the presidents were assassinated. They were the or died in office. They were an American dream-like president. So, so Fury's against taxes, Harris is against taxes. I'm not surprised at all. Washington did not come from nothing. He was a middle class. Yes, but Harry, he came from the point, like right before that Trenton battle, he came from the point of absolute despair and about to be destroyed, and through hard work and ingenuity and that individualistic spirit that Americans are known for, he was able to overcome the British, overcome the threat of being executed as a treasonous rebel, and become the president of the United States, a country that he had no idea really fully existed when he crossed the Delaware. So, why do I love history? Great question. Because of story like that. History is about the human condition and ideas and stories, and it tells us about who we are as people, and I enjoy learning about that, so I love history because of that. So, but good question. So, does anyone want to have another topic they want to talk about with history or social studies? What about new immigrants to Europe, for example, get to use free medical services but haven't paid any taxes? Why can't we pay for our own medical services? I think you're wanting to talk about politics, and I'm not doing that right now. Who invented taxes? Almost every civilization in history has had some form of taxes. Taxes on imports, like tariffs and duties, customs. Other civilizations have had taxes on goods that are sold. So sales taxes, income taxes, in the sense of how we understand taxes, the modern tax code is obviously extraordinarily draconian, extraordinarily large and expansive, and has nothing to do with the way taxes were in the past. But taxes existed in every single human society. Taxes were paid with either goods or with money. Feudal systems and case systems in Europe and India and China and Egypt all use different styles of taxation, where peasants and workers would pay for protections, safety, and military, and being kept out of military service to noblemen and their vassals and soldiers. So, Alias, hello. Thank you for watching my shorts. I really enjoy that. We do short content every day here on the channel and long-form videos Mondays and Fridays. My next one that is dropping, I'm really excited for. It is the 7 Roman kings. It is the entire history of Rome before the Republic, with a little nod to Virgil instead of to Livy. So I'm really looking forward to that and learn how I talk about the historiography. Ozzy, great to see you. Drew Peanuts, a long time. Why doesn't Switzerland take refugees yet they preach to other countries to do so? Switzerland has I love Switzerland. I love Tanuki when he comes here on the channel and tells me about his sweet Swiss history. But Switzerland has had an interesting insular effect, and it's probably because of the different Alps that keep it separated from the Italians, the Germans, and the French. And while they've been influenced by those societies, they're also very much their own kingdom, their own society, their own peoples, all throughout European history into the modern day. And what makes the Swiss particularly unique is they feel that they can be insular and nationalistic and nativistic whenever they want, and they can use the natural barriers around them to keep them from being invaded, and that's why they don't get involved in either World War in the 20th century. They're not involved in the First World War, the 7 Years' War in the 1750s. They really don't remain, they are not a huge player in European geopolitics throughout much of the 19th and 20th century, because they're kind of on their own. I think Napoleon took over them for a little while. I forget what Napoleon did with the Swiss. But the Swiss kind of are on their own, and they like it that way. So that's a huge reason why they're not probably to this day taking a lot of immigrants from the Middle East and things like that. Collecting more taxation is absolutely necessary. It is absolutely necessary. More taxes than is, I don't know what you're saying, Hars. But Drew, great question about Switzerland. Viper, hello, welcome to the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel. People are arguing about taxes, that's fun. And the reason they're arguing about taxes is we just got monetized. We're on the second tier of monetization. We are celebrating this weekend. Come and join us today. After this, we're gonna jump over to Instagram. And then tomorrow we have a 2-hour live stream at 3 p.m. Eastern time. So we're going 3 hours earlier than normal. And we will be going for 2 hours of answering Q&A. And then we will be doing a live stream lecture this Sunday, which you guys will get to vote on here on the channel. So, let's see. What do you think would have happened if the Newburgh Address didn't convince the troops? Well, is the Newburgh Address what George Washington said to his soldiers to get them to keep fighting? Switzerland's general public have so much power, it's unreal. Yes, they're a very, very direct democracy. Speaking of Swiss neutrality, any thoughts on Operation Tannenbaum? Is that Hitler? Was that Hitler? Again, you're using terms. I'm not sure exactly what they mean. I think that's the plan Hitler had to basically try to conquer the Swiss, and it never came to anything. I've heard similar stuff like that before. Can you tell me why Eastern German, Austrian people are different than Western German? That's a great question, E-Dog. East German people, obviously, in the 20th century, have historically have had greater connections to Poles. There's more Poles and Czechs. During the time of the Holy Roman Empire, the eastern part of the empire was Bohemia, which is now the Czech Republic and Slovakia. Obviously, they're closer to the Russians, so they've had more influence with the Russians and things like that. So their culture is a little bit different. The Prussians came and became the predominant power that eventually created the German Empire in the late 19th century. They, of course, were destroyed after the Great War, or what I call World War II in 1918. And then Germany was reorganized by the Weimar Republic. Then the Nazis came to power. The Nazis oppressed many people who were German. They forced Austria to rejoin them. Austria, for centuries, had been ruled by different by different emperors in one imperial family known as the Habsburgs. The Habsburgs collapsed after that Great War, and then 20 years later, Hitler annexed Austria to give the German peoples more land, because Austria and Germany share a lot of cultural and historical and linguistic heritage, and this is called the Anschluss. In 1938, and then Austria was basically occupied by the Allies after the war, and then basically made neutral in the fight between communism in the East and democracy in the West. Germany was occupied in the East by the Soviets, who were allowed to get to Berlin before the Western Allies. I'm talking about World War II or World War III here, depending on what you want to call it. And then in 1945, it was divided. The occupation, the Soviets took the East, including the eastern half of the city of Berlin. The Allies took the West and West Berlin. And then in 1949, the occupations ended and two new governments were created. The Democratic Republic of Germany was, I believe, the one in the East. And there was another one in the West, and there was East and West Germany. The East was run by a communist sympathetic government. The West was run by a capitalist government. And so Western Germany has had a closer relation to the United States, NATO countries, and things like that over the last 75 years, despite the efforts of East Germans to get to West Germany as much as possible, and Austrians to get to the West. I was just reading a story that I think it was Ivana Trump, Trump's first wife, who was from a communist country, got married and got Austrian citizenship so she could emigrate to the United States. Of course, Arnold Schwarzenegger is an Austrian. East Germans found it really difficult to get to the West, but a lot of communist countries had people wanting to go to Austria so they could get to the West, because Austria was a non-aligned country during the Cold War between 1949 and 1991. So basically, East Germany has had some cultural hiccups in the last century compared to West Germany, and Austria has been aligned with the Germans at multiple points during its history, but it's a very different entity altogether. So some fascinating stuff there. Welcome to the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel, where we bring you history in a friendly, neighborly manner. What's the most important battle of World War II? I call it World War III, Viper, but go ahead, whatever you like, other than D-Day. I'd say the Bulge. I think it was the Germans' last attempt to stymie the war, although Stalingrad is definitely, I think actually Stalingrad is the most important battle if I'm talking about the Western Front. There's North Africa. I think the siege of Palermo, the taking of Sicily is huge. I forget the name of the operation, but it was where they landed on the Sicilian beaches. That was huge in the North African front. Then in the Pacific, it's got to be Iwo Jima or Okinawa. The land hopping, basically these very small islands, thousands of men dying and fighting ferociously on both sides in order to get closer or farther away from the Japanese mainlands. So there you go. Why didn't Switzerland take refugees, yet they preached to other countries to do so? Switzerland's a very insular country, as I was talking about earlier, with its own understanding of borders and nativism, and it really kind of gets to pick and choose based off of the cultural, literally the geography, the topography of Switzerland allows it to pick and choose when it wants to actually be part of the European political establishment and when it wants to partake in European affairs. It's a natural barrier. It keeps them safe. It kept the Nazis, the Imperial Germans, and the French from attacking them in both world wars in the 20th century and in the 1750s. The Swiss kind of are able to do their own thing, focus on their own economy. They have a really strong military. They're primed for defense, and they're primed for keeping themselves very isolated. By the way, some of the most beautiful areas in the world are in Switzerland. Just absolutely gorgeous and breathtaking. You feel like you're walking through paradise. Let me see here. I'm trying to answer your questions. The Swiss Guard and Swiss Army knives are hardly threatening. It's not the Swiss Guard and Swiss Army knives that are threatening. They are a military powerhouse, and they have some of the loosest gun control laws in all of Europe. Because that's where the Nazis were storing all of their money. Plus, how else are we going to bribe everyone? Basically, that's true. The Nazis love using the Swiss for that. But they did think about invading them. That's what Tannenbaum, I think that was Operation Tannenbaum. Let me see here, trying to get through the messages. Sam was asking about the history of you probably don't clear your browsing history. Can you share the history? Why would you say that? I don't need to. Maybe that's why I don't. To think about it logically, would you want Woodrow Wilson or James Buchanan as your president? I'll take Wilson. Wilson won a war. Buchanan started one that destroyed the nation. Period. And I'm sorry, I don't like Woodrow Wilson. I think he's highly overrated, just like I think FDR is highly overrated, even though I gave a very fair, objective analysis of FDR in my live stream lecture from last Sunday. You guys can go watch it. Maybe I should do Woodrow Wilson for my live stream lecture this Sunday and can go through him with a fine-tooth comb the way I did FDR and talk about his legacy. But James Buchanan is the worst president in U.S. history. Other candidates might be Andrew Johnson, John Tyler, Richard Nixon. I wouldn't say Nixon's is one of the worst presidents. Those are some candidates I can think of. Sam was asking about the history of Greenland. Greenland, I was hearing a rumor, I think it might be true, that they called it Greenland in order to get people to go there because they didn't want them to, because the environment is so unfriendly. Greenland was originally settled. I don't remember there being native tribes there. There might have been, I'm not sure, I don't know. But Greenland's European connection began with Eric the Red, who settled that area, was it Leif Erikson, who settled that area, coming from Iceland as a kind of a shootout of what was called the North Sea Empire. And it was eventually, I think for a time it belonged to Norway. Eventually the Danish got their hands on it. Where it concerns current geopolitics and the United States' interest in it, Greenland during this Third World War, Second World War in the 1940s, the Nazis occupied Denmark, and FDR took control of Greenland in order to keep the Nazis from setting up a base from which they could attack the United States. After the war, fearing the influence of the Soviet Union in the Arctic Circle, Harry Truman tried to buy Greenland from the Danes, and the Danes refused. I think in 2007, the Danes gave the people of Greenland self-governance, and of course, President Trump is actively seeking to buy or annex the areas. So there you go. I don't know everything about Greenland, but Greenland was the launching point for how the Vikings got to Nova Scotia and to the New World almost 500 years before Columbus and Henry Cabot, the first European, John Cabot, the first European to set foot in North America since the Vikings, not Columbus. You probably don't clear, I already read that. Thank you, Drew, I really appreciate that. Can you share the history of Kaliningrad? Why is it so far away from Russia? I think it was part of Prussia. I forget exactly how the Russians got it. I think it was a settlement coming out of the last World War. I'm not sure. Yes, it was a German area. The Prussians had it for a long time. What type of people helped develop the country Chile? Chile was settled later by the Spanish. Originally, there were certain native tribes there. I don't know if the Incan Empire ever controlled Chile. They may have controlled parts of it. I'm not 100% sure. It was obviously within the Spanish realm, and in the 1820s, it gained its independence, as did most countries in South America. Why Germany lost every battle, still very good in automobile and other stuff. German engineering was the best. The German tanks, like the Panzers, were the best, and they won a lot of battles in the last World War. The problem was the United States outproduced them. FDR unleashed the American production and assembly line with reckless abandon, and that is how and created the military-industrial complex in order to crush the much more advanced Germans. The United States is away from refugee areas too, yet the Democrats shipped, okay, whatever. Yeah, how old are you? Are you single? Leave me be, leave me be. I don't share my personal information here, but I'm happy everybody is so curious about who I am. You guys are very nice. Bella's, hello. Good to see you. Thank you for joining us. Yes, Harry Brandon, you're absolutely right. Woodrow Wilson was a vicious racist, but James Buchanan allowed the South to walk away so they could protect slavery. I'm going to take Buchanan. I'm going to take Wilson over Buchanan. A lot of presidents are racist. Lincoln was racist by many of today's standards. Buchanan did purchase several slaves and take them north, and his moral character is not always in question. I think James Buchanan was actually a nice guy and had some very interesting things about him. He refused to get married because the woman he fell in love with, he broke it off, and then she died of a heart attack, but it was somewhat linked to depression and sadness and apathy after the breakup. So he vowed never to get married, although a lot of people think he was actually a homosexual. I think James Buchanan's a fascinating guy. And I think all presidents are fascinating. Any world leader is a fascinating individual. But I think Woodrow Wilson was a more successful president. From getting his agenda done, to listening to the country, to winning a war, Wilson beats Buchanan in every regard. Was he more racist than Buchanan? Probably. Yeah, Woodrow Wilson came from the Confederacy. He was the only, other than John Tyler, the only U.S. president to be a Confederate citizen, and he had no problems with the KKK. He had no problems with keeping women from voting. He segregated the federal government. I think he resegregated the military. And yeah, I'm not putting Woodrow Wilson high, but he's definitely better than James Buchanan, at least as a president. Yeah, Lifelight, Andrew Johnson saying, Lifelight's saying, and he's absolutely right, or she, Andrew Johnson's negative impact on the nation genuinely can't be understated. Yes, Andrew Johnson is the reason the United States has not achieved the racial harmony that was possible in the 1860s and 70s. I honestly believe that if Lincoln had lived, he would have figured out a way to give reparations to African Americans, which would have created a new social structure in the South. He would have allowed more education, more opportunities. He would have prevented Jim Crow. He would have gotten the 13th and 14th Amendments. And then after he had been president, Grant would have become president, and there would be a lot less worry about the Klan and other things. Lincoln would not have pardoned the Confederate leaders as fast as Johnson did. Lincoln would have figured it out. Who knows? Lincoln may have been president for more than 2 terms. Yes, Harry, I have heard that about Woodrow Wilson. And Woodrow Wilson covered up his own health scandal in a horrible way. Well, his wife basically ran the country. Wilson proposed the ridiculously weak League of Nations that probably would have worked if the United States was part of it. Woodrow Wilson did a lot of crap when he was president. And I'm monetized now, so I can say that. But he had some bright spots to his presidency. That is why a lot of historians like to comment on it. Wilson had a vision of a supranational future that was inevitable for the world after the collapse of a post-Napoleonic order in Europe, because anything that the Europeans were doing, their colonies were being forced to do too at the beginning of the 20th century. Wilson understood a lot of things, and I give him a lot for that. But I don't give him a lot for the racism, and I talk about it constantly on the channel. Bella, do you know anything about Japan? A lot about Japan. I did a video, one of my favorite videos was talking about the history of Christianity in Japan, something that Japan is not known for, but is actually quite fascinating. I'm reading Shogun right now. I love learning about the Tokugawa Shogun, Tokugawa Ieyasu, who's the inspiration for Lord Toranaga. So yes, I love learning about Japan. The geishas and the samurai, the Bushido code, it's fascinating to me how medieval Europe, which didn't know about Japan or didn't know Japan, and medieval Japan, which didn't really know Europe, both of them had almost the same exact feudal structure, social structure at the same time, as well as the Indians with their case Varna system, which I talked about in last week's long form video. Yeah, Bells, I love talking about that stuff. Cares about his grand, huge historic actions or events that happened during their presidency. That's not true, Hars. And by the way, I'm still waiting for you to explain how disingenuous I am. I do care about the intricacies of their personality, but I don't think that's the biggest measure on their presidency. Because George Washington owned slaves, I'm not going to take him off of being the second best president ever, in my opinion. Harry, there were already sedition acts. John Adams did a sedition act. Is he one of the worst presidents? No. Neanderthals are different than Homo sapiens? I think so. I'm not 100% sure. I'm not huge on the different evolutionary stages, but I think they are supposed to be. Sup, man? Just came from Catholic Eucharist service. Well, Emperor, I hope you enjoyed it, and welcome to the Friendly Neighborhood History channel. We talk about Catholic history here all the time because it's all types of history in all kinds of friendly ways. Why was the guy who built the Hearst Castle in Central California so wealthy, and where did he come from? William Randolph Hearst started off on the East Coast. William Randolph Hearst started off on the East Coast. The New York Daily News was his big paper. I think he owned several others, and he was what was called a yellow journalist. He pushed stories to try to get the United States to go to war with Spain. He built a media empire by sensationalizing a lot of the topics he was dealing with during the early 20th century. He started off as a liberal pro-union work mindset guy, and he eventually became a far-right advocate. He ran for governor of New York. He tried a political career. He amassed a huge fortune. I think he was very much invested in oil and other businesses, but his media empire was huge. He tried to basically make Marion Davies the biggest star in Hollywood in the early 1930s, and that kind of backfired on him. But he built his in Xanadu de Kublai Khan, as Samuel Taylor Coleridge tells us. And inspired by that, he built his own perfect Xanadu, his own heaven on earth, and that is Hearst Castle. After his death, he was still alive. The great Orson Welles, a director and actor, made Citizen Kane, maybe the best movie ever, that depicts the life, the rise, the fall, the ups and the downs of William Randolph Hearst. I think he died in the late 40s. But Hearst Castle in San Simeon, California, kind of up the coast, is a real big entity, real famous, has a bunch of different rooms, ancient relics and things, and is extraordinarily pristine. We invaded Iceland in 1941 to 1942, so the Nazis couldn't invade, although this was heavily protested by the Icelandic government. It was a peaceful invasion. Yes, a peaceful invasion. What an oxymoron. Do you know about Japan? If so, I'm sorry, Bellas. I hope you're still here. I hope you heard what I had to say about that. Didn't Quebec at one point have a vote to secede from Canada? Were they trying to be their own country or part of France? I think this was afterwards. I don't know if they were trying to be part of Canada. From what I understand, the French Canadians have always kind of wanted to make Quebec their own independent nation, French Canada, basically. Nice to see you, Moto. Long time. Can I ask if, based on history, are we close to World War III now, or are we in the Cold War period with Iran? I think we're closer to a Cold War period, and it's not with Iran. I don't think if you're talking about we, as in the United States, the United States has more to do than Iran. I think the big Cold War potential adversary is China. I think China is buying up trade and influence in rare earth minerals. There's an arms race in economic fortunes and trade and things like that. And so the United States is kind of in a very, very soft Cold War with China. If there's a world war, I don't know how it's going to come. And if there is a world war, it would be the fourth world war, because Fury, I believe that there's already been 3 world wars. I do question if you are single, but since you can go to the DMV, I have a strong feeling you are. If I can go to the DMV, what does that mean? I went to the DMV. That was an excursion. I felt like I was in a totalitarian regime. But other than that, yeah. If you learn editing and animation, you can earn a lot, considering the knowledge of history you have. See, that's not my strong point. I've done a lot on editing and animation. I've learned so much. I'm learning even more the more I do it. I'm trying my absolute best, and if people want to partner with me and help the channel do that, that's what we're going to do. That's what every dollar that we earn in this channel goes back into the channel to get better equipment, better video skills, better all of those things. Where did Greek people actually originate? That's a great question. Some of the Greek civilizations that originated might have been influenced by the Sea Peoples, who sailed around the Aegean and that area and the Eastern Mediterranean in the Bronze and in the late Bronze and early Iron Ages. I think it was. I think it might have been an Indo-Aryan people. The Mycenaeans were some of the earliest Greeks. The Minoans on Crete. I think it was. I'm trying to remember. I used to know this. I think it might have been an Aryan migrative group that traveled constantly through Turkey and the Middle East in the second millennium BC. I'm not 100% sure who exactly they were. They were obviously separate from the Turks. You give similar vibes as the new Superman. Thanks, David Cornsworth. I'll take it. Where did Sumerians originally come from? Sumerians, if most human civilizations start, most human treks start in the Middle East and Africa and then branch outward west and to other places. The Sumerians were one of the OG people who migrated and eventually, probably from Africa or other parts of the Middle East, and settled in the Mesopotamian Fertile Crescent near the Tigris and Euphrates, where they had easy access to consistent streams of farming. Remember something, in the in the Neolithic era, between about 10,000 BC and about 4,000 BC, almost every single human being was a nomad of one variety or another. Or sorry, before then they were nomads. About 10,000, 9,000, the Green Revolution starts, and then eventually people start forming communal farms, and then communities start, and farming hitches people to certain areas. So before farming actually starts, before the Green Revolution actually gets going in ancient human history, everyone is migratory, and everyone was passing through these areas all the time. What forces people to settle down is access to consistent forms of farming where they can do crop rotation, where they can slash and burn so that they can do different types of crops at different times and different seasons, and of course irrigation. And the best way to irrigate is to be close to rivers. So whenever people can find rivers, they can start to build civilization. Lincoln had very normal opinions on race relations for his time. Wilson was a vicious racist yes, Wilson was backwards. I'm not saying Wilson was good. I never said Wilson was good. How come UK conquered most of the world? No, Buchanan was more than way over his head. He basically tried to force Kansas to accept a pro-slavery constitution, and he did a bunch of other ridiculous nonsense. But Sam, the truth of the matter is the UK conquered most of the world. The British, the real reason why is the Navy. And this is a huge thing I talk about with European history all the time. Technology and the ability and willingness to travel with that technology and sail all around is what brought the Europeans everywhere, for the Columbian Exchange, for the colonization, for the oppression and murder of native peoples, for all sorts of horrible and some good things. Technology was what allowed the Europeans to stop oppressing each other and start oppressing other people in other areas. And by the way, those people were exploiting each other all the time and oppressing each other all the time. The Europeans did it on a much greater scale because of the technological access that they had. What made the British unique among the Europeans is two things. One, the British they're Europeans, but they're not European in the sense that they're not on the mainland continent. They often feel and have felt throughout their history a back and forth desire to be part of the European experiment. If something's going on in Europe and they think it's interesting, they'll dip their toe in the water. If not, they'll go do their own thing. And it happened because after they lost the 100 Years' War, their presence in France basically vanished in 1453. The same year Constantinople was destroyed. That opened up a whole bunch of channels for people who wanted to explore and travel westward and find ways to, or eastward, and find ways to trade with India, China, and Japan without going through the usual streams through the Middle East because of the Ottoman Turks being so opposed to Catholic Christianity. So the Catholic Christians of Western Europe tended to rely on sailing more and more. Britain was an island. Britain's existence depended on the ability to sail and move to different places at different times. Early signs of this came with John Cabot, the first European to step foot in Canada since the Vikings, and then kept going with the Virginia Company of Elizabeth I and her father, Henry VIII, creating the Royal Navy as a bulwark against the French across the English Channel. With the French, their mortal enemy, so close to them, the dominance of the Channel was a huge thing for the English to actually use. But they soon realized that this naval advantage allowed them to travel to other places, trade with other places, and come back with supplies and sometimes even slaves. So what made the British, and so as this power grew, the British Navy grew. As their wealth grew, they were able to resupply their Navy. So by the time you get to the Napoleonic era and the American Revolution before that, the British had the most dominant Navy in the world. They proved this in the 7 Years' War, what I call the First World War, in the 1750s and early 60s by beating the French. This allows them to get a stranglehold on India. And then for the next century and a half, they basically go wherever they want, sailing and settling new areas like Australia and New Zealand, colonizing large sections of Africa like Egypt, Uganda, and South Africa. And of course, they have Canada as well. So there's a few things there. Let me see. Yes, like the live, subscribe for more. Did you see John Tyler just had a biological grandson that died in May? Yes, he's the grandson of a president who was president in the 1840s. It was fascinating. And his father was like 75 when he had him, and John Tyler was like 70 when he had that guy, his father. So why didn't the U.S. join the League of Nations, considering they wanted it formed? Wilson wanted it formed. The Republicans in the Senate, who were unwilling to work with Wilson, and Wilson was unwilling to work with them, didn't want it formed. What was your question, Fury? I hope I didn't ignore it. I haven't seen your question. Were the people of Atlantis black because it was in West Africa, north on the Atlantic Ocean, though? Nobody knows if it actually existed and what their pigmentation was like. Plato used it as an allegorical lesson, but he envisioned them being Greek because everybody envisions an advanced society being similar to their own. And I love Japan too. Can the live stream lecture Sunday possibly be about Ronald Reagan? I'll have everyone vote in on the channel for different topics. Who do you think is responsible for the decline in birth rate in Japan? Automation of technology, overcrowding, small living conditions. The Japanese have achieved some point of economic relevance and excellence, and when that happens, societies tend to have lower birth rates. Japan is also cramped. There's less space, there's less area for them to actually breed. That's why overcrowding is an issue in their cities. The sedition, although they do a great job of not having a large homeless population and keeping their streets extremely clean. The Sedition Act did genuinely tarnish Adams to at least some extent in my eyes. I get he was by no means terrible, but for a man who helped enshrine free speech, yeah, it's a strange, strange mistake by an otherwise good president. Yes, what is the reason I am disingenuous? I can't remember everything. History of Canada, is it older than the USA? You mean you've got First Nations people, and if we're to assume that a lot of the First Nations people, Aborigines and Indians, got to Canada, got to the Americas through the Bering Strait and areas in that, they went through Alaska, which wasn't part of the United States, there was no United States, then they settled in Canada first, technically, but Canada didn't exist and neither did the United States. Large sections of the United States and Canada were settled by Native Americans, of course. Various different tribes and nations, such as the Nez Perce, settled in British Columbia, as well as the Pacific Northwest in the United States, and the Lakota and Sioux nations settled, the Crow, tribes like that settled Blackfeet all around the Canadian border. So transience between the borders was quite common for the Native Americans. There was no semblance of the 49th parallel being the border between Canada and the northern part of the United States because neither entity existed at the time. So here's something else to think about. Canada, the English get to Canada before anyone gets to the United States. The first American United States colony to be really settled is Florida. And the first permanent settlement in the United States is St. Augustine in 1565, but that's the Spanish. The English who create the American colonies that become the United States don't get there until the 1600s, and the United States isn't created until the 1770s. Canada doesn't get its political autonomy until the 1830s and doesn't get its full independence from Great Britain until the 1980s, although it's still part of the Commonwealth to this day. So it all depends on how you're defining it. Quebec is founded as a French colony in the late 1500s, or 1600s, and it goes back and forth. The Canadians got the first real settlements going in Canada before the English, but the English got there first. So it all depends on how you define it, but Canada as an independent entity comes after the United States. Did any of the robber barons serve in the Civil War? I can't think of any. No. Some of them were already pretty wealthy. Fulton, I think Vanderbilt was already very wealthy. I don't know if Carnegie did. I don't know if he was even here yet. But yeah. Let's be fair. John Adams' presidency was probably the worst bit of his political career. Yes, to be sure. I don't understand any of this, but I like hearing and learning this. Let me see here, getting through the chat. I'm sure, Bella's, your animation is better than mine. I don't like using animations. I like using paintings and pictures. I don't like using AI, but animations could be cool if I could get someone to do it, because I can't animate anything or do graphic design or any of that stuff. And yes, welcome to the Friendly Neighborhood History channel. The Corzo and you can become a member with Kevin and get your signature badge. He's got, I think that's Nicholas the First. Yeah. Let me see here. Let me see. And you, Harry. And yes, thank you to my wonderful moderators. Please show them some support. Let me see here. What do you think about the modern British? What do you think the modern Britain would be like if William the Conqueror failed? I don't know how long England would have been able to stay away from the continental aspirations of the French. Maybe the French would have conquered large sections of England and run them, unlike the Plantagenets and Normans, who owned large sections of France, but also were the English kings like William and Richard the Lionheart and Henry II. So, let me see. Can you talk about Atlantis? I think I just did. Oh, I finally caught up to the chat. Can you talk about the Fort Moms massacre and what the Indians did to women and children? This happened in several different forts around the American frontier where Native Americans would, feeling that their land was being encroached on, because it certainly was, would attack women, children, and men. Would attack women and children when the men were out and or were not available, and would ambush them, sometimes even burning their settlements and killing and kidnapping a lot of them, just to send the very clear message: you are not welcomed here because you are trespassing on our lands. This was a back and forth that would only cause more and more vicious tensions and create a vicious cycle where the Americans would continue to attack the Native Americans. Harry, it's the Department of Motor Vehicles. It is known for being boring, monotonous, long lines, really inefficient bureaucrats. No offense to the people who work there, but it is an arduous process to go there, and I was there for 2 hours today before I got here. Why didn't the Indians want to share? Indians did share land and did sometimes sanction the sharing of land, and that's why some of the treaties they were open to signing, but the treaties were violated, and when treaties are violated, it gets really hard for you to want to share your land with people who have just killed a bunch of you and don't want to share your land, they just want to steal it. Yeah, so Hars, so since we got a small light crowd and we're 6 minutes almost, so we're almost done, and I'm exhausted. I could not use a big crowd today. Let's see here. Hars, what were you going to say about me being disingenuous? I'm ready for your bad argument. Some of the DMV stuff is done online, but they told me I couldn't do DMV stuff online, so I had to go into the office. I think the American colonies were so ridiculous in their management of post 7 years war affairs that it is unreal. I think the British were so ridiculous in their handling of India that it's unreal. There you go. Yes, Fury, you are very lucky when it comes to DMV handling and things like that. But yes, Hars, please enlighten me about how disingenuous I am, because I am still waiting to actually hear that. And I finally switched over to all messages because I've been missing all of the messages. Harris, don't be an instigator. For every 23 shillings in tax a person in England pays. See, Harry, I have corrected you on this so many times, you just don't listen. The truth of the matter is, the American colonies did not get upset with them raising taxes. Nobody cares about that. And anyone who knows the history of the United States, or even Great Britain, needs to know that that is not why the American colonies revolted. The American colonies revolted because they had no voice in Parliament to actually express to them why they were being taxed. They had always paid through their state taxes, their colonial taxes, and a section of that, be it in Massachusetts or Virginia or Maryland or any of the colonies, went back to Britain. Rodolfo, good to see you. You've been to my estate? Oh boy, don't say estate like that. Not in the wake of the Epstein stuff. Yes, it was, the taxation was fine. They didn't mind paying it. We all knew I know very well the Canadians and the Indians and the British themselves were paying higher taxes. That's not the issue. The Americans didn't like taxation, not because it was too much for them to pay. They paid more for the smugglers in many occasions than they did going through the legal channels. Their problem with the taxation was a lack of representation in Parliament. The British argument was, we just suffered and died to keep you safe, which the Americans suffered and died too in that war, so you owe us. So I understand both perspectives, but I can articulate both perspectives. That's the difference. I like that people want to put their taxes into hurting people who were largely not causing issues instead of healthcare and emergency services. Yeah, it's crazy how that works, Rando. Good to see you, by the way. Well, I mean, Parliament represents everybody, and even if Americans had been given the right to vote like Britain had, nearly no one in the colonies could have voted anyways. It doesn't matter, Harry. Most people, yes, they didn't care about that. They wanted at least 1 or 2 representatives in Parliament. They could have had 3 representatives for each section. The British consistently refused to give it to them. No, it's not true. So that's what they wanted. They wanted I know you don't like this, Harry, but I'm just telling you the history. And I've told you this so many times, and that's why I'm not happy about this, because I've had to explain this to you many, many times. And so I'll do it in a friendly, neighborly manner, and then I don't want to hear it again. The Americans told the Brits, we're not getting represented in your Parliament. And the Brits said, we're not taxing you too heavily. In fact, the Brits were doing exactly what you're doing right now to me. Yeah, and India, and they didn't care about the Indians. The Indians were not an anglicized colony. So there you go there. I'm still waiting for Harsh to explain how disingenuous I am. Yes, they already had people there, and those people were English, and they believed as Englishmen they should be represented in Parliament. That's why they wanted to be represented in Parliament. That's why they had a revolution. Harry argues with me all the time. I like it. Harry's extremely knowledgeable and knows a lot, but he doesn't want to listen to why the Americans actually had a revolution, or why Donald Trump does anything he does, or why Americans do anything, or why the British have done anything wrong. I let everyone debate. I let people debate about any kind of topic. We talk about everything here at the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel. Debate, argue, whatever you want to call it, civilized. I never get into the, I mean, it's gotten pretty nasty here sometimes, to be fair, Kevin. People have called me terrible names and horrible things, but yeah. So, Lifelight saying, I somewhat disagree with the notion of it representing India, the nation de jure, but a majority of Indians in the principle of the nation's sovereignty. They didn't even run India. The British East India Company ran parts of India. A lot of India still had its independence under the Maratha Confederacy, which gave fleeting allegiance to the the Raj, to the Mughal Empire. So to say that India was colonized the same way the Americans were is patently false. Yes, it's like John Adams. He was the founding father who cracked on about the tyranny of King George and immediately ignored his own constitution. Yes, people become hypocrites all the time and contradict themselves all the time. That's how human nature works. So I'm still waiting for Harsh to tell me how I'm disingenuous. That is bothering me, and since we got a light crowd, I want to know why that is the case, Harsh. Since we got 10 minutes and a light crowd. Well, the Americans always think they're right too. Was Hitler trying to turn Russia into Germany? India that the UK had. He wanted a buffer zone, which is interesting because the Russians themselves created the notion of the buffer zone long before the Germans did. And he had an ideological problem with the Germans because they were with the Russians because they were communists, and he was a national socialist, and communism advocates global revolution. National socialism advocates internal revolution using the corporate and militaristic and traditional means to create a fascist government. And so communists and fascists had hated each other. Stalin had tried to join the Axis. Hitler had used him to carve up Poland, and then he attacked him. Was Hitler trying to turn Russia into their India? No, I don't think fully. I think I think he really would have loved to just destroy communism. The British weren't colonizing India and fighting with India for an ideological battle. Most of India was still governed by principalities with local princes having full domestic authority, while the British government and viceroyalty would intervene very rarely. Yes, very true. And the British government didn't start really heavily intervening until the 1850s. They did intervene at certain times to back up the East India Company, but they let the East India Company run the British colonies. Robert Clive of India. He was working for the British East India Company. Yes, it was exactly what they did in Afghanistan 50 years after they finally incorporated India into their empire. Gandhi was great. Gandhi was really great, although he had some shortcomings and failings. So, friendly history. I'll tell you last time. You have a disingenuous view because you think that Woodrow Wilson's unearned position in World War I, that he almost fumbled, is deserving credit for winning it. Was he the president when the Americans fought the war, and did they win the war? He didn't do a great job of handling everything. No president does in every single war. But he does get credit, as Reagan gets credit for helping to bring down the Soviet Union, he gets credit for helping to bring down the Imperial Germans. There's nothing wrong with that. That's not a disingenuous view. You need to get a dictionary and look up what disingenuous is. What does Princess Bride say? You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means. Are Brits better than Germans? I don't think any particular group, ethnic group, race is better than another. But I do think that the Germans have the Brits, especially in World War III or World War II, had the better moral case. But my point is, they don't really need representation because the British Parliament didn't run India. Yes, but the Americans did need representation because the British government did not run them because it was salutary neglect. Americans do it too. It's a white people thing. No offense. Something I picked up on. Someone told me white people that they're superior. It's an ego thing and an arrogance, in my opinion. Yes, there are many, many arrogant white people, and there are very many arrogant Black and Latino and Asian people. I have met many of them, so, and many white people who are arrogant. The point I was trying to make is that the British Parliament didn't necessarily represent either, regardless of their level of Anglicization. I would say they were closer to the Americans, obviously, and in their view, they represented all the Americans, but that's not true. You acknowledged in a past conversation that him bringing in office during World War I was a coincidence, but despite it being a coincidence and he micromanaged the war, you still think he deserves credit. Did they lose the war? How Hitler became a dictator. Hitler became a dictator by basically manipulating the German people into scapegoating their enemies from the previous World War and the Jews in order to use them and blame them for all of their problems. We are in the center of the earth. I mean, we put the line there, but still we're the center of the earth. Yes, that's a very British view. And the Americans feel the same way. Yes. I'm saying that a president who was there in the wartime, who was able to win the war and not screw up everything, even though he made mistakes, to be sure, deserves credit. William McKinley is not directly responsible for the United States winning the Spanish-American War, but he gets the credit for winning that war. So FDR isn't responsible for every single American victory in the war, but he won the war. It was Wilson who put Pershing in charge of the American troops, okay? It was Wilson who came up with a peace plan, and if his peace plan had actually been adopted, the Germans wouldn't have been heavily punished. There wouldn't have been and the Nazis could never have, and that would have created a more stable Weimar Republic, which probably could have withstood the Nazis in the 30s, possibly. Yeah, how dare the Germans don't sit down till later for tea time. That's true. And the British infrastructure, British civilization, I mean, you get 25% of the world in your population. The British are obviously going to have something going on there. Did the United States win that war? Yes. Did the United States win that war, Hars? And how is it disingenuous for me to claim that Woodrow Wilson being president during that time was a coincidence when any president being president at a time of a war? We were talking about William Randolph Hearst, and we were talking about how, we were talking about William Randolph Hearst, and we were talking about how the Americans, the yellow journalism. Any president who is in charge of a country during a war does their thing. So yeah. Do you know why they drew a map? It's because each country would draw the map of their country in the center, and because Britain was the most important country at the time, they said that Britain. Yes, and when you got 25% of the world as your population, and you are responsible for creating some of the other greatest powers in the world, like the United States, Australia, and Canada, you can do that. So yeah. Hi, Solomon. Good to see you right at the end. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to wrap it up in a minute. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I don't know why it was such a light crowd today, but that's okay. We had a good time. I enjoyed the questions and everything. It's all right, Solomon. Don't be sorry. I'm glad you're here. But yes, Hars, you disagree with me. That's okay. But I'm not disingenuous. Disingenuous, I mean, I need a definition of it. I need you to give me a definition of it, a proper definition of it, not the definition you're using, apparently. The U.S. won World War I, but not because of overwhelmingly of Woodrow Wilson's actions. Winning a war infers that didn't coincidentally become president as the war happened. Wilson does not fit it. He didn't become president as the war began. He's the one that brought us into the war. And he made the mistake of not bringing us into the war sooner. And if he did, we would have won the war. The war would have been over a lot sooner. The Soviet Union would have never existed. I'm not saying Woodrow Wilson has an impeccable record. I'm saying I'm giving him credit for something, for responsibility. So there you go. You must be, Solomon. That's a very busy job. Yeah. So, anyways, I don't know why. It's everybody else having fun. Sorry, I don't mean to take it out on my mods, but maybe it's my frustration with the DMV. Favorite historical movies of all time? Let me see here. Braveheart is one. Patriot is one. Those are not really historical movies, but I like Mel Gibson's 90s. I like the 90s had some of the best historical movies. Obviously, you've got Schindler's List and how important that is. And Wilson was a hypocrite. He had just been elected to his second term. If he genuinely believed in keeping America out of the war, what sort of leader is he if he does not? Yes, I criticized him for being a hypocrite. I have said Wilson is a hypocrite. I do not believe Woodrow Wilson was a good person. That doesn't mean he wasn't a good leader or didn't do some good things when he was president. Kingdom of Heaven. Oh, Ridley Scott. I've never seen it, but I should. And I've done a few videos just recently about the impact of the Kingdom of Jerusalem on history. So I I should watch. 1917 was really good. Yeah. What part of history low-key triggers you? That's a good question. And welcome, Code. I don't think I've ever seen you before. What part of history low-key triggers you? I think learning about the fact that we talk about how horrible, that we never talk about the oppression of Eastern Europe after the Nazis were defeated by the Soviets. The fact that many Soviet atrocities, because the Soviet Union helped the United States win the Third or Second World War, whatever you want to call it, that's a big issue there. So I think that triggers me because we don't know, no one talks about how the way that Mengele was experimenting at Auschwitz, we have Russians experimenting on Romanians and on prisoners of war and on other humans in Romania after the war ended. Some horrifying stuff. I'm giving Woodrow Wilson credit for being the president during the war, putting Pershing in charge of the army, and winning the war. That's all I'm giving him credit for. I didn't say he entered at the right time. I didn't say he didn't make mistakes. I'm not saying any of that stuff. I mean, for crying out loud, George Washington made tons of mistakes while leading the army. Would you call him incompetent? Let's see. I can go down the list here. FDR messed up many things with the economy that the United States, if the economy had been roaring, might have been able to get involved in the war sooner. FDR probably should have been more involved in the war in 1940 before Operation Barbarossa. There's tons of things you can say about presidents in wartime and the way they handle things. That doesn't mean they don't get credit for certain things. Lyndon Johnson did some good things during his presidency. He doesn't get credit because he lost Vietnam. Yeah, I should go see Napoleon. I still have not seen it. Can you tell us about the origins of political correctness? I believe it was Mao who came up with the terminology, but political correctness in its modern form is basically being able to be conducive to all audiences in a multicultural sense. Yeah, Ridley Scott, Hitchcock, they're great. Love them both. And thank you for joining us from Ireland. I should go back and watch it. Shawshank Redemption. Shawshank Redemption's not a historical movie, but it is a good movie. Yeah, the fighting was rubbish, but they did blow off the nose of a Sphinx during Napoleon's Ottoman campaign. Little people know about the Katyn, the massacre of the Poles. Yes, the Soviets did horrifying things. In fact, people were running away to the west, towards Germany, despite the Nazi atrocities when the Soviets were coming, to get to the Americans. And there is no comparison with how the Americans treated people in France and Germany at the end of that war, and how the Nazis and how the Soviets treated the Eastern Europeans. If you want to start drawing the first moral battle of the Cold War was that, and the Americans won, and the British and the Australians and the Canadians and all of them. Do you think Patton was assassinated? No, there's no evidence to it. A long video news daily. I do news reels on this channel every day, and you know what, Solomon? I sympathize because I can't get to everything I want to get to. So I could. What I'm going to do is I'm going to compile all of them from this week and make one full-length video. So you don't have to go and search if you want to watch my news videos. There will be a long-form video available later today that has all of my news reels from this week. I still have to do Fridays though, but that will be from last Friday, from last Saturday to today. So I do news reels every day, about a minute long. You're falsely framing the situation. Woodrow Wilson either mismanaged the war or managed the war properly, and I see that he overwhelmingly mismanaged the war, which was completely avoidable. I disagree. That's not disingenuous. I disagree. Did Lincoln screw up by putting McClellan in charge of the army? How about Winfield Scott? Do you want to go down the list of all the horrible generals Lincoln had in charge of the Army of the Potomac and how Lee continued to embarrass him over and over again because of that? And that's the president who won the Civil War. And Lincoln gets credit because he won the Civil War. And so you can call it whatever you want, you can disagree with it, but it's not disingenuous. As a general, George Washington was not a good general, brilliant leader, but bad general. No, he was a good general. You just don't like him because he beat you. Washington and Adams once mistakenly switched wooden dentures. Like, kid, happy for... His dentures weren't made out of wood, they were made out of slave bone. Maybe. All of the dead people in Texas who voted for LBJ was shady too. LBJ did some shady stuff. Let me see here. I don't see so much purpose in focusing on so heavily on such little credit you can give to Woodrow Wilson for managing war when most of it was mismanaged and he had bad intentions behind his actions. Okay? I don't know how that's disingenuous of me. You still have not explained to me how I'm being disingenuous and purposefully misleading people. Have you ever seen Barry Lyndon? The Napoleon with Joaquin Phoenix is garbage, by the way. I still want to see it because I just love Napoleon so much. I can stand it. And go watch my video on the French Revolution and on Napoleon if you want to learn more about that. I've done long form videos on both of them. Has there ever been a dwarf revolution? That'd be funny if that happened. Yeah. Have you ever seen Barry Lyndon? I know I have not. Nugs, hello. Multiple times. The only reason he managed to escape with his miniature left arm was thanks to a fog and war. Who are you referring to? I don't know who you're referring to. All right. I will take one more question and then we will sign off. This has been fun, and enjoyable. But I'm gonna head over to Instagram. So if you guys can, you can follow me on Instagram, friendly_history1, and we will go for an hour there for another Q&A as we are celebrating getting monetized. Thank you for all of your support. You can become a member and get special perks, early access to videos here on the channel. You can follow the social media handles that are pinned in the chat and all of that great stuff. Because of is a past conversation, you argued that Woodrow Wilson stumbled into a situation as president, mismanaged it. Still, I didn't say that. I never have said that. I've never said he stumbled into that situation. It was not, the war had not started when he became president. If I said that, I was wrong. Okay, plain and simple. But I don't believe I ever said that Wilson stumbled into the situation. I think that he mismanaged the situation by not joining the war sooner. I think that's the biggest criticism you can make of him, not anything else. I see people in the U.S. still flying the Confederate flag. That wasn't an enemy of the Union. I'm from Brazil. Well, thank you for joining us all the way from Brazil Code. Welcome. Yes, it was an enemy of the Union. It was a rebel cause, and it shouldn't be flown. It just doesn't make sense. People think that's their culture. No, their culture is the American flag. Yeah, I'm going to go to Insta. I typically try to. Shakir, hello. Good to see you. Are picking a fight with me over something from several live streams ago. Because you call me disingenuous. I asked you why you think I'm disingenuous, and now you've explained it, and there's a nothing burger. So thank you. And Shakar, it's good to see you from India. Thank you for joining us. We've got Harry, who's on from Great Britain. We got so many people from all over the world. I do like that Woodrow Wilson refused to let commanders from any other countries command our troops. Yep, that sounds like something Woodrow Wilson would do, and something Harry would complain about. So, Hars, I'm sorry, but I appreciate your concern about the topic. I understand where you are coming from. I'm not a huge fan of Woodrow Wilson. I have said it over and over again. I only defend him on small things that I think he got right and did fine with. And really, there's some things that are more ideological, like the Federal Reserve and his progressive reforms. Wilson is the one who made the income, who basically the income tax came in under Wilson. So yeah. Again, because which Wilson, Messiah, Jesus Christ, Woodrow Wilson knew he thought best. Yes, that's true. And it worked out pretty well for you guys because the Brits weren't able to win the war without the Americans. Oops. And yes, he was a progressive and he was a bigot. So Drew, you are actually technically correct. I'm not flying the Woodrow Wilson banner. I don't like defending him. I don't like defending people in history that I don't admire, but I'm defending him against the idea that he never did anything right as president, and there is no reason why anyone should like him. There are tons of historians who like him. I don't happen to be one of them, but I know why they like him. I know why a lot of people in America are big fans of him, and yeah, there you go. To quote Donald Trump, are we still talking about Woodrow Wilson? Oh, we thought with the war, we fought the war, we just needed your money. The Americans did crap all fighting in the First World War, just like you guys did in the trenches. Sorry about that. That didn't work out well for you guys. Although I will say the Brits kept the French from falling apart in that war. There you go. We did more of the fighting the Americans could ever dream of. That's because you were in the war for 3 years longer than the Americans were. Harry, that's all nonsense. Just because you guys turned up late and fought show up with fresh and make up pumping resources that you lots have been. How would the last, I think it was Somme, the last two major German, or Marne, I was getting confused, I think it was Somme. How would have those offensives gone? How would it have gone if the Germans had destroyed the Russians and then come swooping back to the west and attacked the French without the American forces, without the backup of American forces? How would that have gone? Yes. I had to pull that line, Harris, because we talk about Woodrow Wilson on every single live stream. And even I'm getting tired of talking about Woodrow Wilson. I understand why you don't like him. You have convinced me of several important factors there, but I don't agree with all of them. Haven't been here in a long time. What's up, man? I had a lot of work. No worries, Nicholas. It's good to see you here. What do you think would have happened if Hannibal had sacked, destroyed Rome? I don't think he ever could have. I think it was more of a espionage guerrilla campaign that he was running, basically the Romans chase him and then send them back with their tail behind the legs because he was a better general than all of them. The way the Romans defeated him in the second Punic War, Luis, is they went to his land and did to him what he was doing to them. Germany was already on its last legs. It had no resources, and the blockade was already crippled. Germany was literally starving, which is why an offensive would have. And the French and the British were overwhelmed too on the Western Front. They were fighting on their home turf. A German offensive could have broken the lines completely for the French and the British with the renewed forces. Finally, with the Schlieffen Plan working, who knows what could have happened? We don't know what would have happened. Yes, it is true that the British blockade was extremely successful. Nobody talks about the Battle of Jutland and how without the British blockade, the Germans would have probably won the war. That's fair too. But without the Americans coming in there, the British may have not won the war at all, despite that. Yes, they gave Scipio Africanus, and he was called the Scipio Africanus because he was victory against in Africa. If no Wilson in World War I, then no World War II and no Spanish flu. No. If Wilson earlier joins war, then no World War II and no Spanish flu. The Spanish flu, by the way, would have come to the United States anyways. The United States was becoming closer and closer to the other European countries in trade and things like that, and it would have showed up here anyways. The British would have been fine. The French would have got their butts kicked. No one would have cared. You would have cared because you were the Brits. I never subscribed to the idea that if without the United States, you'd all be speaking German. That's nonsensical, stupid, overly patriotic nonsense. There is some truth to the fact that, especially that in the next war, the Third World War, what you call the Second World War, the British would have definitely could have been really heavily subjugated had the Americans not come in. But they should have come in earlier in both wars. I think if they had gotten involved in that First World War, Second World War, whatever you want to call it, the Great War, let's just agree to call it that, then the Germans would have surrendered sooner. If the American ships, along with the British ships, had been blockading, it would have been a much quicker surrender. The Americans probably would have helped with Gallipoli. Gallipoli wouldn't have been a disaster. The Ottoman Turks would have been knocked out sooner, and the Russians wouldn't have collapsed. The Americans giving foreign aid to the Russians, going to Vladivostok, would have refurbished them, and probably would have led to their empire not collapsing and no rise of communism. So there you have it. Jordan, happy birthday to you, if it is your birthday. If not, you just want attention, you got your attention, so what? What kept the ancient Germans and Brits from coming out into the world before 200 BC? They didn't come out into the world so much as they were exposed. Those people had been itinerant and moving around France, Germany, and the British Isles, and large sections of Europe for a long time. Remember, the Germanic tribes were like the Native American tribes. They were nations of peoples, and they were very diverse and went everywhere all along those areas. The French proposed to build the Channel Tunnel after World War I, and the British response was, our relationship will never be good enough for that. That sounds like a very British response. That's funny. Let me see. Harry, the British was so poor and starving like Germany. Not as bad. Not nearly as bad. They weren't being attacked and assaulted directly, and they didn't have a huge blockade around them. Spanish flu started in USA via Chinese labor. That's probably more true. The reason it's called the Spanish flu, thank you for pointing that out, Salinger. The reason it's called the Spanish flu is because none of the newspapers were printing it because they were all focused on the war. The Spanish were the first to report on cases of people dying. They stayed out of both world wars in the 20th century. They didn't stay out of the first one in the 1750s, by the way. So yeah. And yeah, it's true, Nicholas. So you know what, Harsh? I'm going to come closer to you on Woodrow Wilson by saying Woodrow Wilson messed up the war. If you'd gotten involved in the war sooner, you wouldn't have had the Soviet Union, probably. But that's all hypotheticals, and hypotheticals are really hard to prove. You could have kept going, but I don't know if the British would have won the war. And if the French had been knocked out of the war, I don't see the British staying in that war any longer. I don't see them being able to run the Arabic Revolution as well without the American backup on the Western Front. I don't see the Eastern Front. I don't see. I don't see it as. I see it in two ways. It was bad for the Americans to not get involved sooner, but it was also bad for. But it also would have been worse had they not got involved when they did. So yeah, just to point out, Americans believe that communism is the government doing anything. That's a myopically ridiculous view. I'm an American. I know what communism is. Communism is not the government doing anything. Me going to the DMV today, the DMV is not communism, although I feel like I'm living in a communist state every time I go there. The DMV is not communism. Firefighters saving a cat from a tree is not communism. I see this argument all the time on the internet. Oh, do you like having traffic lights? You're a socialist. Absurd nonsense. And I see people on the left and the right making that argument. Absurd nonsense. It completely ignores how socialism and communism actually work. Otter, good to see you. Have you seen the documentary Israelism? Check it out and maybe let us know. I'd be happy to, Bad Santa. Why are you asking me? 99, no, they don't. They really don't, Harry. Most Americans know the difference between communism and the government doing anything because we are not anarchists. Yeah, that's a very, very hot take. I mean, the only reason you know what communism is because you have a bit of common sense like a European. Oh my God, you are a nationalist. Yeah. So, anyways, I know that what most Americans probably don't know is that socialism and communism are different. So, Harry, maybe there you and I can agree on that. So, Hars, are we good on Woodrow Wilson? Are we going to stop talking about Woodrow Wilson now? Are we going to release all the pertinent data regarding this Woodrow Wilson hoax? Hope we can. So when is having infrastructure socialist? What the hell? I've never heard that idea. There are plenty of people, there are libertarians who basically think that if the government provides you with anything whatsoever, that's socialism. And there are liberals in this country who believe, oh, you like this? You're a socialist. No, that's not how socialism works. I'm sorry. Nationalization of all industries, the loss of private property, the redistribution of wealth, that's not the same thing. Anything done anywhere in the world is done better by Europeans. Really? Yes. Like when the French conquered the English, that was the Europeans doing better. And England was not Europe, and has been not, and many times has decided not to be Europe. The British are European when they want to be. We will never be okay on Woodrow Wilson until you realize that it is useless and it's borderline unnecessary to give credit to Woodrow Wilson on the basis of World War I. Okay, so I'm going to ask my Attorney General to release all of the pertinent data on Woodrow Wilson tomorrow, and then she won't do it. Okay, all right, so there you go. Thank you. You subbed to your channel. Technically, we are European. That's true. You are European, and so are Americans. Most Americans are European. The British are Europeans when they want to be. And that's the general truth. That's not the technical truth. The technical truth is, yes, Europeans are considered Caucasian European, or British are considered Caucasian Europeans, but the British are not European Europeans. Their intervention in the continent is pick and choose ever since the 15th century. The only reason they developed the British Navy, you can't have it both. You can't have the British are European involved, and the British developed their Royal Navy because they didn't want to be involved in European affairs anymore, so they went around the world. Yes, and by the way, Europeans definitely do 99.99% of the stuff better than the rest of the world. Okay, like the fact that Britain and France have a better economy than China? Not the Attorney General releasing data on Wilson. Harry, yeah. Yeah, anyways. Harry, we got hippies. So anyways, all right, we're at 77 minutes. We went over, but that's my special gift to you because we are celebrating getting monetized. So hopefully you are celebrating with us. And Harry is having fun. We're going to go off to Instagram now. Hars, I hope we are okay. I am sorry for getting upset, but the truth of the matter is you're wrong. Also has 1 billion people. Britain has 72 million. Yes, China is also better at reproducing than the British are. Thank you for proving that the Chinese are better at reproducing than the British are. You're not winning this one. China also has an incredibly unstable economy and also currently has a capital flight going on. Do you like, I love this. Everyone has to die so that the British are better. And the British are doing so well with so many other of their issues, economic stagnation, decline. Do you know that in 10 years, Poland will have a bigger economy than the British? Do you know that? My view is disingenuous. No, my view is nuanced. It's focusing on certain things and acknowledging other things, but not fully agreeing with them. So, and yes, like the live if you haven't already. China also had a smaller economy than Britain and France till 2005, and then you guys continue to contract, so you guys are not doing so well. Yes, I know he showed Birth of a Nation. I don't like Woodrow. Are we still talking about Woodrow Wilson? I don't like Woodrow Wilson. He was a nobody in real life. I'm tired of this hoax that makes me into a Woodrow Wilson defender. I have never endorsed Woodrow Wilson. I wouldn't have voted for him in either election. I would have voted for probably Theodore Roosevelt in 1912. and definitely Charles Evans Hughes in 1916. Wilson ran on the lie that he kept us out of war and then got us involved in the war anyways because he was ridiculously capricious. I definitely think that one of the biggest and most underrated scandals in U.S. history was the fact that Woodrow Wilson lied about his stroke and then had his wife cover up for him and act as president, not even telling Thomas Marshall. Wilson is one of the reasons we came up with the 25th Amendment afterwards. He was an imperialist. He was a progressive. He created the Federal Reserve, which most Americans hate, by the way, for some reason. Go back and forth on that. And the country disliked the Democrats so much after Woodrow Wilson and the economy crashing in 1919, 1920 that they elected overwhelmingly a Republican by the largest popular vote disparity in U.S. history, Warren G. Harding, who wasn't anything to look at either, by the way. There, I'm finally being based about Woodrow Wilson. I don't like Woodrow Wilson. I've never been a huge fan of Woodrow Wilson. I'm defending him on certain small things that I think he did right because I see the vast majority of historians all across the world really love Woodrow Wilson, and I want to know why they are because I'm a historian just like them. Fine. Defends... Oh, jeez. Wilson, I just don't get this. We talk about Woodrow Wilson more than we talk about any other U.S. president, except when Harry wants to talk about Trump, which is every time. But we should talk about ancient Chinese pyramids and not Wilson. Yes. Somebody asked me a question about something else. She was 14, Steve. Oh, jeez, great. Now Steve wants to start fact-checking me. Yes, Salinger, there are some parallels between Woodrow Wilson and Joe Biden, two Democratic presidents at two very turbulent times whose wives kind of might have ran the show. We don't know about Joe Biden yet, but we do know about Woodrow Wilson. Yes, jeez. I don't like Woodrow Wilson. I've criticized him so many times. I'm just seeing what's in the chat. California's economy is larger than England's. Yes, so Harry, how are you going to deal with that one? Thank you so much, Steve, for pointing that out. We should shame family history and go on a smear campaign that he likes Woodrow Wilson. Oh, for God's sakes, you guys are just... Okay, you guys are funny. That's funny. Okay. Also, I am eating some cherry ice cream in the park. Ryan, it's good to see you. I got to catch up with Ryan because I haven't seen him in a while. And Ryan, by the way, if you have subscribed to the Substack, you can read that master's thesis. I know I promised it for you. It has been delivered. Promises made, promises kept. Are there giants? Why did U.S. hide so many bones in our journey west? Because it was preserving Native American culture, the same culture that they had overrun, dispossessed, and destroyed, which is very ironic to me. But the truth of the matter is there are legends of Native Americans and giants, just like there are legends of giants and pyramids and ziggurats and temples in almost every human society, because humans have this idea of the giant, powerful man, the mighty man of renown that the book of Genesis mentions in the Bible. YT Banner is a huge photo of Woodrow Wilson as God. You know what? You're on. We'll do it. We'll do it, Hars. Thank you for the suggestion. I've been busy doing my job, working as a mortician. We've been busy. Dark. Honestly, Trump is going to be viewed in the future as a great president. Presidents like Lincoln and FDR villainized during their term, but ended up looking like great presidents in the future. And presidents like Andrew Johnson were vilified during their presidency and look like total jackasses today. Yes, I love Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson is my God, everything he writes, the 14 points is my Bible. You ask which God I believe in, it's Woodrow Wilson. Yes, there you go. Is there any U.S. presidents that you do like or admire? I really admire James Monroe. I think he created the American foreign policy that has brought America, that has put America in charge of a lot of geopolitical issues. The reason the United States can wave its hand and have so much geopolitical weight starts with James Monroe. I think he was one of the smartest presidents. I think America was prosperous and strong. I like William McKinley. I think he created the American imperialism. He brought America forward into the 20th century. He would have been one of the best presidents had he not been shot and killed. I love Theodore Roosevelt. Who doesn't love Theodore Roosevelt? I mean, obviously, gets shot, still has to give a speech anyways. And everybody in this channel talks about how much I love Woodrow Wilson, so I might as well just give in, because all of my argumentation as to why I don't do that and all of the nuance seems to fall on deaf ears, even of my mods. So, okay, Hars. I've got some of my guys and gals are fighting me on this one. There, you get another mention. And yes, James K. Polk is very underrated. I do love Theodore Roosevelt. Who doesn't love Theodore Roosevelt? George Bush Sr. definitely should get more love, in my opinion, too, Alaska. What do you think about Lincoln? I think Lincoln's the best president. I don't think it's close. I think Washington is the only one who can say he's the GOAT, but Lincoln's the GOAT. First emperor of China and his burial. Emperor Qin Shi Huang, Shi Huangdi, the great ruler. Qin, the name of China comes from him. He ruled China from 220 BC to about 210 BC. He established the first unified Chinese imperial dynasty. And when he died, he wanted to be buried with alive soldiers who could watch over him for eternity and then be buried with him. And his architect decided that that was too morbid, so he used terracotta and clay to create an army of soldiers who would watch over him in the afterlife. And this was discovered in China, I think in the late 1970s, and that is the terracotta army, which is the burial mound of the great Qin Shi Huang, who, unlike the Egyptian pharaohs who buried with all their gold and other supplies, he was buried with all of the trimmings. So all of his soldiers. I love the Lincoln Monument. It's a good one. Lincoln lost more American lives than anyone else in American history. Yes, I'm very well aware of that. Oh no, don't. We've already gone over Wilson. Let's not go over Lincoln because people want to attack Lincoln for some reason. Chester A. Arthur definitely would have been more underrated if he had not screwed up. If he was just not so dang lazy. And by the way, he would have had his own term and would have been a pretty successful president had he not had a talk about Biden hiding cancer. Chester Alan Arthur hid Bright's disease from the American people, left office because of it, and then died. Jimmy Carter is my favorite person to hold the presidency. He's just such a good guy, and his post-presidency was amazing. The guy was building houses at 96. He is an incredible guy. He was a mensch when it comes to being outside of the White House. So let's see here. All right. I mean, isn't it just ingenuous to say that the man who almost screwed up his World War opportunity as president deserves to get credit for the war? No, because I don't believe the first part. It's disingenuous to assume that I agree with a premise that I don't agree with and then hold me accountable to that premise. Projection is a psychological disorder in which you take your own behavior and apply it to someone else. Do you prefer ducks or swans? Ducks are tastier. Didn't Wilson's wife toward the end of his term do? Yep. Opinions on Eisenhower? Love Eisenhower. Underrated. Look at my top 10 U.S. presidents video. Eisenhower's in it. Did I put James Monroe in it? I did. I think you should set up the Messiah Woodrow Wilson Foundation with Friendly History as its patron and trustee. Yes, we'll change the name of the channel to the Friendly Woodrow Wilson Society, and we'll see how we get. And my profile will be Woodrow Wilson. So, duck is very tasty indeed. But who would ever kill a swan? I love swans. I love Swan Lake. So. We're going to wrap up. We'll go over to Instagram. We'll see if anyone joins us. And if not, we'll call it a day because I'm tired. And I'm sorry if I got upset, but I took my Jackson underrated. No, not at all. I took my DMV frustration out on you guys. I've never eaten swan. Doctor Who, What, Where, don't describe what it tastes like because I just don't want to think about swans being and how delicious they are because then I'll want to eat them. But yes, get your membership $4. And you guys can give comments, all donations, help because we put them back into the channel. So, yeah, I'm not a big Jackson fan. I'm sorry. I have opinions. Opinions are like navels. Everyone has one, and they often are very dirty. So there you go. I'm going to move over to Instagram. Thank you all for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow. We went an hour and 27 minutes here, but tomorrow we're going to go for 2 hours, but we're going to be doing it a little earlier. Instead of doing it at 11 Alaska time, we're going to be doing, instead of doing it at 2 o'clock Alaskan time, we're doing it at 11 Alaska time tomorrow. So join us then, 11 o'clock Alaska time, aka 3 p.m. on the East Coast, for some wonderful stuff, some wonderful friendly neighborhood history, 2 hours of Q&A, Ask Me Anything. And it is nice as always. Thank you so much, Luis. Take care. And thank you, Ryan. I just saw that. I look forward to seeing you on Instagram, friendly_history1, and we'll go there for a little while and see if anyone wants to talk about some history and social studies. And I'll leave you with this just because I really appreciate all of you, and thank you so much. I can't stress enough how all of you guys, who I've seen so many times here on the channel, have helped make this channel great and have helped make this channel successful and have obviously gotten us to monetization, which is obviously a lot of fun to be in that position, obviously. And we'll be continuing to get ad revenues and all sorts of great stuff. We just reached it earlier this week. Luis, thank you for following us there. But I just want to leave you with, I hope you all have a minute to talk about our Lord and Savior, Woodrow Wilson, and all of that great stuff. Yes, we're going green. It was all a lie. Take care. And remember, and I'll see you over on Instagram, and I'll see you tomorrow for our live stream. And make sure to go vote for your idea of who we got what we're going to be talking about on Sunday, the live stream. And by the way, Woodrow Wilson is out. I am not doing Woodrow Wilson as a topic on Sunday. I'm sorry. I don't care if no one comes. I'm not doing Woodrow Wilson as a topic. Yes, bend the knee, worship our great God and Savior, Woodrow Wilson. I can't believe this is so sacrilegious. Jeez. All right, so see you over on Instagram. And remember, love history as always. And me and the greatest president, the greatest human